Hello everyone. Today we're going to go and take a look at getting started with forms in React. This is going to be a very basic introduction to using some forms in React, ideas on how to make them work, and go over some different ideas of implementing them. We're not going to go too detailed into like the different types of inputs. We'll do that a little later. That'll be more the intermediate level. But anyway, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is we're just going to create a practice React project. If you don't have WebStorm, you're using something like VS Code, just go into the terminal, type in the command npx create-react app. Look up how to do that, or do your preferred method of creating a React app from scratch. And then we can go ahead and just delete everything out of the return statement for the app because we're not going to use the built-in stuff. We're also not going to really style this too much. It's just going to be a very, very basic. I've created 3 directories here, one for components, one for hooks, one for validation. We'll use them in a little bit, but for now, let's go into the hooks, and we're going to create a new JavaScript file. Actually, no, we're not. We're going to create a new file, and we're just going to call it basic form. And we'll give it the JSX. Yeah, we'll add it. All right. Let's go ahead and start, and we'll do our import statement. And then I like to do the standard functions because I can just do the default, the export default right up here. That's really the only reason I like using standard functions instead of arrow functions. Won't need any parameters or anything like that. And then let's just go ahead and open up our return. And just for that, we'll give it a React fragment. Okay. So now kind of the basics of React forms is every time we create a React form, our input is going to get saved into some sort of state. And the way we can do that is through various methods. Now, if it's a simple form, what we can do is we can go ahead and store all the state changes right in the form and then do something with it, and we'll demonstrate that. So for now, what we'll do is we'll just create a basic form. We'll get rid of this action because we don't need it. Okay, and then we'll do a input, and we'll leave that as text. We'll just probably have everything stay as text, and then we'll do a label HTML. We'll do name here, give it name here. We'll give it an ID of name. And then we'll give it a value of name. Okay. We'll create another one. And this will just change these guys to email. Okay. All right. And then we'll do a button. Okay. So now let's look at some of the different ways we can implement this. Right now, this form would show up, or actually, no, it would not show up on the screen. Go back to our app. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do that and that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run this. And we'll pull this off to the side. Okay, so can't run this yet because we got to define our other things first. That makes sense. Just so you guys can see. All right, let's get rid of that. All right, let's go ahead and define these. Okay, so now what we need to do is right now this form would appear on the screen, but it's not going to do anything. We don't have any on change listeners. We don't have an on submit, and we're not storing the values in anything. So what we're going to do for a basic form like this is we're going to create two states that are going to change in reaction to the user's input. So we're going to do const, and we'll do name, and then we'll do the setter. And then we'll do email, and again we'll do the setter. Need an equal sign here. All right. Okay. So now it would actually show up. We can see that. There's our form. Very, very basic. That's fine. But right now, we type in here. We get a reset, but it didn't actually do anything with it. Okay. So now let's go into the implementation of how to affect the changes. Now there's two ways we can do this in a basic setting. One very simple way is we do on change, and then we pass in here the event. Okay, and then we do we're going to do set, this is name, and we're going to do event dot target dot value. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do that for both. Event, and then lambda function, set email to event dot all right, we can do that. Now we need to do something when it's submitted. All right, so now let's take care of the submit. Okay, so what we're going to do here is in this button, we're going to do type equals and then submit. Not sure. Oh, because we have an extra one here. Okay. And then in this form tag, we're going to do on submit, and then we'll do event. And then we're going to do event.prevent default. That's going to keep the page from refreshing. And then we'll just do a console of name and email. And right now, missing semicolon. We shouldn't need a semicolon for that. We'll just put it there to make it happy. All right, and we get our. All right, so now you can see it works. We get our test. We get our test email, but we get this error. We get component is changing an uncontrolled input to be controlled. We're going from an undefined value to a defined value, which does not happen. It doesn't like that. The reason for that is because up here we're setting the value as name and email, but in this use state it's blank. We don't have any initial values. So if we pass in an initial state here, okay, and we do that, now let's refresh. Now let's type in our test email, and hit submit. Notice our error goes away because it's not an undefined value anymore. It's just an empty string that we're changing to another string. So that's how you get rid of that particular error. All right, now let's look at another way that you could implement this basic form. Here, this is nice and simple. This is a good way of doing it so you're not cluttering up too much, but also what you could do is you could do something a little different for your on change and your submit. We could create a function. You could do this normal, or we could do this the arrow style. We'll do the arrow style, and what we'll do is we'll handle, that'll be the form. Create this. This is going to be your event. This is going to be the function as well. and we'll do set name, and then the same thing, event.target.value. Okay. Now what we would do here is in this on change, what we would do is we would just pass in the handle name change. This cleans up our HTML inside of our JSX a little bit better. We'll do the same thing here. Handle email change equal okay, come back here. And now technically we could do the same thing too. We could do a const and we could do a handle submit. So we'll do still passing in the event. And this will just be what we'll do is here we do the event dot prevent. Didn't do it. Now it's way down there. Interesting. Prevent default, and then the email. Okay. And let's go in here. Oh, I did one too. Let's go. There we go. That was too far. And then this will be the handle submit. Okay. And we don't need the brackets on these because we're calling a lambda function. So we don't need the opening and closing parentheses. All right, well, let's just refresh this real quick. Something, sure. I'll just use my actual email. That's fine. Hit submit. Everything works the same. All right. So now we have this. Now we have 3 extra lambda functions. We've cleaned up our HTML, but now what happens if we have, 4 or 5 different input fields? Do we want to create lambda functions for each one of the changes and submit, and then have 5 different states that we're tracking all in the same thing? Not really. I kind of want to abstract that away. So now let's go in here and we're going to create a new file, and we'll call this hook form, because we're going to be implementing a custom hook to handle all the changes and everything. Okay, so let's actually get rid of you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start this guy up. So once again, we're just going to import React from React. And then we're going to do an export default function. And this is just going to be called hook form. Okay. We'll handle our return statement pretty much the same way. Just pass in a fragment. Okay. And again, a form. And we'll do our labels. And then we'll do our inputs. Okay, and what we'll do here is we'll just ink down. Okay, and we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be good. All right, we'll start here, and this is the way we'll do this one. We'll do it in all right, so now we need an ID. Now we're going to need a new one inside of this input. We're going to need to give it a name for the way we're going to handle this. So this needs to be also not name, this needs to be address. Okay. I don't know why I put name here. So we're going to call this address, name, address, and then the value for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to leave this as a blank string. Okay. So now we're going to do that on all of this. This one we will call a city. Type is also going to be text. ID is going to be city. Again, we need to pass it a name. And then give it a value. Okay, and for right now, we'll skip this part, but we're going to do the same thing for all of these. Okay, so now we have the basic layout of the form. And now we just need to finally end it with the button. And then this is just going to be called. Okay. So that is going to be everything we need to do for now. Let's go back into our app. We'll change out this basic form to be the hook form. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create the custom hook that is going to allow us to handle all the changes in the submits. So we're going to go into our hook, create a new file, and we'll just call this use form. And then this can just be a standard JS file. Okay, so we're going to do const, and we'll do use form. And open this up. Okay, now in here, we're going to have it receive a callback function. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to do const, and we're going to create the state. So this is going to be called values, and we'll do set values here. Okay, so now we're going to implement the handle change and handle submit functions. So let's do those. So we'll do const. Same way, pass in the event. And then open this up. And then, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do our set values a little differently. So we're going to open this up. And we're going to pass in now a lambda function in here. And we're going to do values. Now you're going to do parentheses and then handlebars or curly brackets, however you want to call them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the spread operator to open up the values. And then we're going to do our square brackets. And we're going to do event.target.name. That's why we needed that name field in our HTML. And you're going to do colon event.target.value. Okay. So what this is doing here, and I forgot to do something up here that maybe will make this make more sense. We're going to pass in as an initial state an empty object. So what this is going to do is values is actually going to store a set of key value pairs now. And as we're using the spread operator here, we're going to open up that object. If a key with the event target name already exists, it's just going to update the value. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create a new entry. So this is why we only need that one set of values. For every value that we change in our form, it's going to have a new event target name. It's going to either update or it's going to create a new one with this handle change function. So that is why we did it that way. Okay. And now what we're going to do here is we'll just do the handle submit. Same way we did it earlier. I see it. There we go. Okay. Now this one's going to be pretty much the same. We're going to call the E. Ooh, that is not what we wanted. Prevent default, and then here is where we're going to add our callback. Okay, and that's it for the handle submit. Now I forgot to do one thing here on this handle change. We're going to want to do an event dot persist as well. Okay, now we're going to return all of these. So we're just going to return an object, and we're going to do values, handle change, and the handle submit. Okay, and then because we used an arrow, we have to export default and use form here. Okay, now that should be it for our custom hook. Once again, in just a slight overview, we create a new function. This is going to be our custom hook. We create our state, which is going to be a values in the setter. We assign it to an empty object. The handle change handles the creation and updating based on a key value pair of the event target name and the event target value. The handle submit prevents the default and then just calls whatever function we pass in here. So now let's bring this into our form. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use the handlebars. We're going to do values, handle change, and the handle submit functions. Okay, and we're going to do use form. Okay, now it wants a callback, right? So now we need to create that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do function, and we're going to do now normally this would be whatever you're calling to handle. I think if you're calling an API to update or create a user or an address based on this form, your call to that API would be inside of this function. For right now, what we're just going to do is, like it says, we're just going to log it. But we're just going to log the values now. Okay? And then, so what we're going to do here is in this use form, we are going to do log form. Okay? All right. So now we have to fix our values. So we're going to go in here, and what this is going to be is this is going to now be our values dot address, and then here values dot city, okay, and zip. And what do we have here? Country. I noticed some spelling errors here. Hold on. Let's fix those. Okay, so we have not necessarily big because it's the ID. Okay. Label for HTML. Let's see what we got here. Unexpected token. accidentally deleted some things we weren't supposed to. All right, so now let's refresh a little bit. Remember that values we set in when we said event.target.name. Here's our name. There's the value. That's what we're pulling from. All right. So now we need to just add the submit to the form. So we'll do on submit. And this is going to call handle submit. And then give this button the type of submit. All right. So now, let's see here. Look form. And then, okay, and then the final thing we need to do is on change is going to be handle change. Okay. We're just going to change this to make this a little bit simpler. Cannot access. Okay, I see why. I see why it's not happy. Oh, actually, no. That's why we want to do that. We want this to be a function because it's going to read the functions before anything else. So if we do this, we can follow the correct React handling into where we do our state first and then our function second. That's why we have it the way we did. Okay, there we go. So I think we still need to have it be like that. No, we don't. Okay. No, we just need the reference to it because we're calling it inside of everything. Okay, that's why it wasn't happy. All right, so now we have 1, 2, 3. City, state, 8,000. Yes, okay. So now, if we submit this, we should see all of those in a nice little object the way we do. So that is an overview of how to use the hooks as a method of creating a form. 3, 2, 1. All right, so that's the method of using hooks to handle the creation of the form. A lot less here. We only have, regardless of how many fields we have, we only really have one state variable here. We only need to create one function instead of having multiple handle change functions for every field or passing in multiple lambda functions to every change. It's a lot simpler, a lot cleaner to read, and a lot easier to deal with. Now, let's actually do something with this, and let's say, okay, if we had this basic form here, and we need some sort of user validation. And we're just going to leave all of these as text and not change the types they are to limit what type of information they can input, but we want some sort of user validation. How do we go about adding that? Let's create a new file, and then we're just going to call this number validation. Also JS. Okay. And then we're going to create a new Lambda function here. And we'll, again, it'll just be called number validation. Okay. And what this is going to do is we're going to have a parameter of an input. Okay. And then I'm going to define a regular expression, a very, very basic one. That's just going to be okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to look for anything A through Z, and I'm going to ignore case, and it's going to be global. So it's going to do everything. Okay. So now what I want is, if I want to do return dot test, and then we're going to pass in the input here. Okay. So that's going to be our validation. Close that out. Close that out. Now, where are we going to put this? We're going to put this in our zip code, because we don't want any letters. We want only numbers in our zip code. So how we can handle that is, what we'll do is we'll get rid of the handle change here. Then I'm going to create a new function here, and we'll call it the exact same thing. We'll just call it number validation. And it's going to take in the event, okay, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to call, I'm going to set a const of result is equal to, and this is going to be we're going to call this number validator, just so we don't have number validation. Input is going to be the event dot target dot value. Okay. Problems. Doesn't like that we have a blank on change, if you're seeing that in the corner. And then what we're going to do is, if not result, then we want to do our handle change, and we want to pass in the event. Okay. Now we need something for our else here. Okay. Because we're not returning anything, so we need to do something else. So here's what we're going to define. We're going to go up here, we're going to create a new state called is valid. Okay. Do our standard thing here. Pass this in, and for the moment, this is going to be, we're going to start off being true. Okay. So if our result, then our is will be false. Okay, and the reason for this is because the way this test is going to work, it's going to test it against the string. If it finds, if our input contains a letter, it's going to come back as true. Now we could reverse it if we wanted to, but it's not really that hard to think of this. So true. So if no result, we're going to tell it to go ahead and handle the change. If not, we're going to set the is valid to false. So now back in our zip code, what we're going to have this do is we're going to do the number validator. It did not automatically import this. That's kind of interesting. And I know why it didn't. Did we not? We did not. Okay. Okay. So now, there we go. That's why we forgot to add the export keyword. Okay. So we have the number validator. That's going to happen. Now, before we need to test this, we need to do well, we'll go over conditional renders later. All right, so let's save this. Okay. So now we should have, if we enter 1, nothing happens. If we enter an A, hey, we get our validation. And notice too, we don't have anything popping up in here. As long as I'm typing this, nothing pops up. All right. And now if we had enter a letter, our error message doesn't go away. So let's go ahead and fix those two things. So on our set invalid, because we're using this, what we could do here is instead of having this handle change here in that, what we're going to do now is we're going to do get rid of this guy. So we're going to say if the result is true, set invalid to false, and we'll put the handle change outside of the if statement. Now, did I save that? Let's save that real quick. All right. Okay, let's do oh. Okay. So what we want to do too is we want to have our else statement now take in this set is valid, and we're going to set it to true. And then underneath here, we're going to handle change, and we're going to pass in the event. That way this one will always fire. So now if we refresh this and we type in a number, we get 8. If we type in that, we get it's not allowed, and then it disappears. So that is the way that we can handle validation. Now notice we're getting that uncontrolled error message again. So let's go back and fix that. We're going to go into our use form. What we're going to do here, let's see here. How can we possibly fix that without creating an issue? One thing we could do is something like this. Okay. How the heck did we get that? We could do something like this to where we're using a ternary to see, hey, does that have a value? If it has, does values.address have a value? If it has a value, use the value. If it doesn't, use an empty string. So now if we try typing something in here, we shouldn't get an error. If we try typing something in the other one, we should get an error. We do. So that does work. You could do something like this. Or we could actually, I think that's about the only way that we could handle that uncontrolled issue thing in this type of setting. The other way is to make the use form not as universal and make it more specific, in which case what we would do here is we would take this initial state and we could do a const state, and then what we do is equal to this, and then we did something like address is a empty string, and this time let's add city in there too. Okay, address and city like this. Okay, and then inside of here, instead of just an empty object, what we're going to do is we're going to pass in that initial state. Okay. Now let's go back to, we don't need you anymore. Let's go back to here and let's get rid of this guy, and we'll pass in values.address. Okay, so now what we should see is if we start typing in address and city, we shouldn't get an error. And then as soon as we start typing in state, we should get that error. So we're good there. We are not good there. Did I save? Let's make sure I saved. Okay, so it worked for address. It did not work for city. Let's double check that we did this. Oh, no wonder. Okay, let's try that again. So no error, no error, error. So that's another way you can handle that error. All right, so that is going to be it for the basic video. Quick recap. We went over the basic form. We have our fields. Our fields each have their own state, each have their own change method, and then one handles submit inside the component itself. Second way is we took all of that logic, we created a custom React hook to handle our values as well as our change and handle submit. And then as a little bonus, we added a simple method of implementing a validator onto it as well. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.